Coming up next on KPBS Evening Edition, San Diego schools got a downgrade in their credit rating today, and one school trustee says he has a plan to keep all schools open.
Also, Occupy San Diego is now 3 weeks old. Will it stay or will it go? We'll talk to a college graduate who's made the occupation his full-time job and says he's not leaving.
KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Joanne Ferrian.
And I'm Dwayne Brown. A lawsuit's been filed over the federal crackdown on medical marijuana dispensaries.
A new report says a San Diego Democrat leads the House in a number of private bills filed to help individuals.
But first, new troubles for the San Diego Unified School District. The investment firm Moody's has downgraded the district's credit rating from AA2 to AA1. That means it will cost more for the district to borrow money. The downgrade comes in a week when the district heard a proposal to shut down 10 schools to close an expected $118 million budget gap. Today, school trustee Scott Barnett said he's working on a plan to keep the district solvent without closing schools. He says his first priority is to keep the district from going under, but his colleagues aren't making it easy.
Have to make tough decisions, and they're not being made at the federal level, they're not being made at the state level, they're not being made at the county level, they're not being made at the city level, and they're not being made at the school level. We are heading down.
Barnett says he will unveil details of his plan next week.
Governor Jerry Brown unveiled a pension reform plan today that goes beyond state employees. Brown wants to see his plan adopted across California. His announcement comes as San Diegans wait to see whether they'll vote on their own controversial pension reform plan this spring. KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr joins us now with more details. Katie, what does the governor's plan entail?
Well, Joanne, as you said, he wants it to see it adopted by state, local, and school pensions. It primarily involves new hires and calls for things like creating a hybrid 401k pension system and raising the retirement age. Brown says there's not much you can do with existing employees beyond increasing their contribution levels before you would run into legal challenges.
Some cities will experiment in this area, and I think over the next few years we'll have a greater and clear definition of what can be done regarding current employees. I went as far as I believe we can be confident of validity from the court. So I went as far as I thought the courts would allow us.
Some critics say not touching current employee benefits means little will change for at least 25 years.
Katie, how does what the governor want to do compare with what San Diego may vote on next spring?
Right. San Diegans may get the chance to vote on a pension reform bill that would eliminate city pensions for most new city hires and replace them with a 401k system. It would also have the city recalculate how current employee benefits are calculated, and it would implement a 5-year base pay freeze for current city employees.
KPBS reporter Katie Orr.
Medical marijuana advocates are suing the federal government over a recent crackdown on pot dispensaries. The suit claims the Fed overstepped its constitutional authority by not respecting how local officials have implemented California's medical marijuana laws. It asks for an injunction to keep the Department of Justice from interfering with dispensaries that meet state and local regulations. Earlier this month, you may recall, federal prosecutors ordered dispensaries to shut down within 45 days.
A new report says San Diego Congressman Bob Filner leaves the House in sponsoring private bills. These are bills that help individuals facing uncommon hardships, and often they focus on immigration. Reporter Roxana Popescu of Investigative News Source has been looking into these private bills. She joins us now from the KPBS News Center. Roxana, what does someone have to do to get a private bill sponsored on their behalf?
Hi, Joanne. Well, first of all, these are really a last resort. So the first criterion would be to be in a very complicated legal situation or immigration situation and to have exhausted all other options. Now, to get the attention of a congressperson, it can be as easy as picking up the phone and just calling his office. That's what happened in some cases with Congressman Filner. However, even before that, it's helpful to have a whole publicity campaign. For example, in some of these cases, the individuals for whom the bills were initiated, they had been in the media, they'd had their friends contacting the congressman, they were part of a broader movement. So by the time they got to his attention, he's already aware of these individuals, and the causes that they represented.
Now, Roxana, Filner sponsored 20 of these bills, more than anyone else in the House. What does that say about him as a legislator?
Well, you know, for the people that these bills helped and for the people that are involved in the causes relating to these bills, like immigration or civil justice, you know, it shows that he's a crusader and that he's making an impact. He's taking a stand to help them out. And it also suggests that he's willing to, you know, blast through the inefficiencies of Washington and do whatever it takes to get results, because these are rare. They're kind of a unique approach to solving problems.
We're going to have to leave it there, Roxana.
Okay.
Your full report can be seen on our website, kpbs.org. That's Roxana Popescu of Investigative News Source.
In these difficult economic times, the transition for young people living in foster care can be devastating when they age out of the system. Today, I met two who are flourishing in the South Bay, thanks to the support of a handful of organizations and a longtime benefactor of foster kids.
1, 2, 3.
It's really a staggering statistic. About 33% of teenagers who leave the foster care system at 18 end up homeless within the first year and a half. Today, 11 of them have a new place to call home here in Chula Vista.
It's like a great opportunity to have somewhere stable for me and my son.
She spent about 11 years in foster care. As she shows us around her modest one-bedroom apartment, she says it's done wonders for 3.5-year-old Junior.
Yes! Like with school, he hadn't been in school. It was hard for him to like interact with kids, and getting him in bed on time was horrible. He would go to sleep whenever he wanted, and just having a home, you know, every night, bedtime 9:30, and dinner at a certain time, and breakfast, and so it's nice.
Moreno says she saw her own father last week for the first time in 7 years.
It was, I don't know, it was really emotional. I mean, I hadn't seen my dad so long, and then him and my son just clicked. My son just has so much energy, and so does my dad, and it was great. This 7-unit complex will be short-lived for Moreno because she's already 7 months pregnant and will soon need room for 3. We're going to move to a bigger place, so.
So this is temporary?
Yes.
This was a collaborative effort among community and county organizations. Besides housing, each resident also receives independent living classes and job readiness support. Occupy San Diego is now 3 weeks old, and the protesters say they're in it for the long haul. One of those protesters is Joanne's guest over at the Evening Edition Roundtable.
Protesters at the Occupy San Diego demonstration are appealing to the public to avoid possible eviction from their downtown camp. We'll have an interview with one of those protesters in just a moment. But first, I want to show you what happened earlier this week in Oakland when police confronted protesters there. Police say they used tear gas and non-lethal bullets in Oakland after protesters threw paint at officers. One protester, an Iraq veteran, suffered a skull fracture during the clash. Several people were arrested. As the Occupy movement goes on, city leaders and police across the country are having to decide whether to allow their tent cities to stay. Here in San Diego, the 3-week protest has been relatively amicable between police and demonstrators, but for one confrontation nearly 2 weeks ago.
You have the legal obligation to protect my First Amendment right.
Protesters have asked city officials to pass a resolution allowing them to continue to occupy the Civic Center Plaza downtown and allowing them to erect up to 300 tents. So far, the City Council has not put the item on the agenda. Joining me now is Abel Thomas from Occupy San Diego. He's been camped downtown for nearly 3 weeks. Abel, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
So first, tell us a little bit about yourself. What were you doing before you began protesting?
Sure. My name's Abel. I'm 22 years old. I'm just a normal guy. I went to college. Last year just graduated. I studied biomedical engineering, and I was just trying to find a job for the longest time before I realized I heard about this Occupy Wall Street movement, and I realized there are major changes that need to be changed, and I jumped on the gun and I immediately got involved, and I haven't looked back since. I'm so glad I decided to do this.
What was it about the movement specifically that appealed to you, an unemployed college graduate? So what did the movement, how did it speak to you?
Me personally, it spoke to me in just the more than anything else, the wealth inequality. There really is a severe wealth inequality between the rich and the poor. The rich are only getting richer while we're barely struggling. People like me, I can't even pay the rent. I can't even get food every day because I'm barely struggling to make it by on the little paychecks that I can get because I am unemployed and whatever. And other people are sitting on so much money and they just don't even know what to do with it anymore. And I think the system just needs a lot of major revamping and a lot of changes.
So you've been there for 3 weeks. What are police saying to you now in terms of whether you can stay and whether you can stay with tents?
It's been a negotiation all the way through. I think we've been working well with them. They've been more than negotiable on their end as well. There are people that have different tactics and different ways of dealing with the police, and we can't control all of them. But as a group, we like to try to work with them as much as possible to make sure that this is the long-term statement that we can stay out here as long as possible and truly exercise our First Amendment rights to protest and make sure we're getting our voices heard.
Don't the public and don't the police have legitimate concerns, public safety, public health concerns? You've got people living in an outdoor space for that long. I mean, it can't be a pretty sight.
Absolutely, and our public image is paramount. We try to work with that. It's a work in progress. We've been doing that all the way through. Our biggest point of contention with the police, really, at this point, is the tents issue. I think that's a severe issue we're trying to work with. There is an ordinance against that, but like you mentioned, it is a health and safety and a fire hazard to not have those things in some cases. I think with winter coming around, it being a little colder, if one person has a cold or if something happens with the food, it can spread very quickly. So I think that's why people have been fighting for tents. The cops have been saying no, and we've just been trying to work with them and to avoid as little tension as possible between the cops and us.
So if police come and tell you, pick up your tent, leave, what are you going to do?
It's been, like I said, a negotiation all the way through. They allowed us for the first few days when we started occupying the Civic Center to keep our tents there. Everything was great. And then they have other events. It is the Civic Center, so they have plenty of other events. And we were negotiable. They said, all right, there's going to be an event on this Saturday. Can you move your tents? And we did. But from that point, they were like, all right, well, this is the law. This is the code about the ordinance. We should start enforcing that now. And that's why we haven't been able to put up our tents. After that point, they gave us a few days, and from that point on, now we're just using sleeping bags and still exercising our rights to be there. New York does it with no tents or in a public park. We're doing the exact same thing that they are. We can do it. We
did invite a member of the police department to be on the show. They couldn't actually come today, but they did send us a statement. I want to read it for the people at home. This comes from Boyd Long, Assistant Chief, San Diego Police Department. He says, it is the position of the San Diego Police Department to allow people the ability to peacefully assemble and protest. That does not give any protester the right to impede others to use the public space. The tents, property, and personal belongings of the protesters cannot be on public property. This information has been provided to most, if not all, of those assembled at the Civic Center. We continue to work with the protesters, requesting they remove their personal property. And again, that is from Boyd Long, the Assistant Police Chief. Now, how long do you plan to stay?
Until changes are made. I keep saying it's going to be, indefinite at this point. We need to make a statement. We're not going to change the system and make the major changes that we want to enact in a day. It's not going to take a month. It's not going to take a few months. It'll probably take several years, and I'm not saying that we're going to be there the whole time, but this is the start of something big, bigger than you or me or anyone here. It's a global movement, and this is the first step into a new paradigm shift in our history books, I believe.
And you're willing to give up your apartment, aren't you?
Absolutely. I'm moving out of my apartment in 4 days to be a full-time occupant.
Some people might just call that homeless.
In between homes, I believe, is a better term to use, I guess. But, yep, I will be homeless, technically. You're right.
Okay. Abel Thomas, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
And, of course, the movement began as a protest against the so-called 1%, the country's wealthiest Americans. A new report out of Washington says the 1% really does exist, and they're getting richer. We'll have an analysis later in the show.
Students at a Southeast San Diego high school are growing their own food, and it's being served up at the school's restaurant. The story from our community desk in just a moment. This is KPBS Evening Edition.
Tonight on KPBS, visit spots in San Diego rumored to be haunted on a Halloween edition of Ken Kramer's About San Diego. The spookiness begins at 8. Then at 8:30 on California's Gold, Huell spends the day in an orchard to learn the ancient art of hoshigaki, which is the drying of persimmons. And at 9, an unidentified tramp is beaten to death in the woods near the village on Midsummer Murders Beyond the Grave. That's tonight on KPBS.
What is space made of? Is time travel possible? Do you exist in another universe? The questions are infinite. The answers start here. When physicist Brian Greene hosts Nova, the Fabric of the Cosmos.
4-part series begins Wednesday at 9, only on KPBS. KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Erwin Jacobs and by
The Congressional Budget Office confirmed yesterday there really is a 1%. An analysis released by the nonpartisan office shows the incomes of the country's top 1% nearly tripled in the past 30 years. The numbers are not so good for the other 99%. Joining me to tell us about what this means to us here in San Diego is Murtaza Baksamusa, a founding member of the Middle Class Taxpayers Association. Murtaza, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Joy.
So what did the Congressional Budget Office look at with regard to income?
This is a nonpartisan research group that looked at the tax rolls of all Americans. And they studied the period between 1979 to 2007, about 3 decades. And during this long 30-year period, what they found is for the lowest 20%, incomes went up 18%. 18% after taking into consideration inflation. For the middle, 60%, incomes went up 37%. And for the top 1%, incomes went up 275%. That's almost 3 times what they made 3 decades ago.
Who are these people in the top 1%? What do they do?
It's primarily corporate executives across a lot of industry sector. What you see is the compensation, which is the labor, paying a significant amount of the wealth increase that is taking place. So the compensation, the executive compensation is a key factor here.
So they're making more money, executives are. So why is everybody else making less money?
Well, if you see the compensation across all industries, workers used to make about workers used to make significant. What has happened over the period of 30 years is that there has not been a reasonable increase in the wages that workers are being paid, a significantly higher increase in the compensation of CEOs.
Is this more of a Wall Street phenomenon because we have a concentration of CEOs, or would we find this same sort of 99 versus the 1% in San Diego County?
Well, Wall Street phenomenon is really about not Wall Street per se, but about financial sector and about investment in the financial industry. So there have been a lot of millionaires across, billionaires across the United States. And so it is not just concentrated there, it is quite scattered across the U.S.
Now, there was another study that came out this week that was also making the headlines, and that came from the U.S. Census Bureau. And we want to show the people at home now what they looked at income disparity with cities across the nation, and they measured cities that have sort of are the least equal, the most disparity. And let's show people at home now the list. New York City, Miami, Los Angeles, now they are the top 3 in terms of having the greatest income disparity. The list also looked at San Diego, and we're number 24, so we're in sort of in the middle of this list of 50. And then finally, the most equal cities, Salt Lake City. We end up with a couple California cities actually on that list of being most equal. Yes, Riverside and Sacramento. So now, what does this tell us in terms of San Diego County and in terms of what people are earning and income disparity?
Well, it tells us that in San Diego, the key problem is not is not really a few egregious cases of high wealth, but it really reflects the rest of America. What it really is about the high cost of living in San Diego. If you think about it, if you were just a single adult trying to make ends meet, just to afford a basic ends budget, it takes $13.92 an hour to be able to make ends meet in San Diego.
So our issue is not necessarily that you have a few very wealthy people, it's that you have a lot of people who just can't afford to live here?
Exactly. That is the key problem. The problem is that of how much we make in terms of the cost of living in San Diego.
And do you see this sort of reaching this critical mass now? We have the Occupy movement across the country. We have both of these studies coming out, all of this information. Is this sort of the tipping point where it becomes a political issue now, an election issue perhaps, in terms of, you know, we're all talking about income disparity?
I think the key issue is going forward what kind of jobs we create that lifts San Diego up. So it's important to understand that 30 years ago, an average worker made enough to make ends meet to live the American dream. The CEO made 40 times that of an average worker. Today, a CEO makes 350 times the wage of an average worker. So that creates a significant amount of disparity.
Murtaza Baksamusa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
A school in South San Diego has started to grow its own food. The new garden at Morris High School is a big step for its school-based restaurant. It's part of Morris High's culinary arts program. KPBS reporter Tom Fudge tells us it's also part of a national movement to improve diets and fight obesity.
The Hungry Tiger restaurant is moving into a new kitchen that's filled with professional equipment. The people who will be working here aren't exactly professionals. They're high school kids, but they cater food events and make lots of the school's signature snack, and some of them have dreams of becoming great cooks.
Yeah, I've always been interested in cooking.
Why is it?
I don't know, it's just like a passion of mine. Like, all my problems go away when I'm just there in the kitchen.
I had to make the chicken Alfredo by myself. It came out pretty good, and then I had people like offering to buy it and stuff, so I felt good about it.
The culinary arts program at Morris operates under the guidance of professional caterer and high school teacher Sarah Pyatt.
It was really fun today, even like with the basil. I mean, so many kids like, oh, I'm not going to eat that, it's green. And then they tried it and they really liked it.
Pyatt doesn't just have a new kitchen to work with. Morris High School now has something she considers crucial to understanding food and its preparation. A garden. On a small patch of ground adjacent to the front gate of Morris High, workers from the Urban Corps of San Diego have installed raised beds and an irrigation system. The Urban Corps focuses on conservation projects that green the environment. Eric Wolf, the group's assistant director, says they had planted several trees on the Morris High campus when they heard of the school's vision for growing their own food.
They had said that the Morris High School really wanted a garden. They were building a restaurant that was going to serve food, be cooked by the students, to students, that they were going to run every aspect of the restaurant, and they'd like to get a source of fresh food.
He says nearly everything they're planting is edible.
So we're going to be planting some trees, a lot of herbs for the school, a lot of vegetables, a lot of fresh fruit.
Sarah Pyatt says cultivating an appreciation for gardening is especially important for city kids.
These students have no connection to where their food comes from. If you say, what about chicken soup? They think it comes out of a can. I mean, I grew up in Iowa, where you grew things, where you saw it, where you harvested, where you made it, and they have no idea.
Morris High School draws from low-income neighborhoods that surround Skyline Drive. Obesity is a huge problem among kids like these, so the food they eat is a huge issue. One answer to the obesity dilemma is better food, and fresh fruits and vegetables are at the center of the farm-to-table movement. The farm-to-table movement has become very popular with schools who see it as a way to address the obesity epidemic. Top chef Alice Waters has worked with the Berkeley School District to try to get a few more fresh vegetables into the diets of school kids. Another vision of what some people call food literacy is found right here, in the San Diego home of a woman who spent her entire career trying to get people to lose weight and eat right. Deborah Zeke is founder of the high-end health spa called Rancho La Puerta, located in Tecate, Mexico. Lately, she's tried to use her influence to bring food literacy to schools, and she says her vision has one very important element.
It's the gardens. The key is that they grow it themselves. No carrot tastes as good as the one you grow.
ZK has lobbied Congress to provide money for a pilot program focusing on 5th grade that would create a food literacy program that includes gardening, cooking, and digestive science.
Every school should have a community garden. And if they don't have a community garden, enough space, they can have trailers. And San Diego has now a food bus in one of the schools, and which I haven't been to see, but I'm looking forward to it.
San Diego Unified School District recently hired a farm-to-school coordinator to work with local farms to bring fresh produce to school lunch programs.
That's Tom Fudge reporting. The grant to create the Morris High School garden came from CAL FIRE. It says the greening of urban spaces is part of its mission. This is KPBS Evening Edition.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next News Hour, the latest on the debt crisis in Europe. That's Thursday on the PBS News Hour.
In the last year, KPBS News has been honored with nearly 36 awards. I'm extremely proud of these honors, and I thank you for your support as we continue to serve our local communities with award-winning news coverage in the years to come.
It's American comedy's highest award for humor, the 14th Kennedy Center Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. 13 immortals have joined the Golden Circle. Now, Will Ferrell takes his well-deserved place. The funniest people in the land come to our nation's capital to honor a comic genius, Will Ferrell, the Mark Twain Prize. Monday, October 31st, 9 p.m., only on PBS.
Welcome back to the Public Square on KPBS Evening Edition. Now it's your turn to weigh in on the Occupy movement. The question about whether the San Diego protesters should be allowed to stay at the Civic Center Plaza is generating a lot of talk on Twitter. Dave B. Gibbs says, yes, I support Occupy San Diego's right to stay in the Civic Center Plaza. Our right to protest is fundamental. And Juju Red says, no, the true Occupy Wall Street left there when they incited violence against SDPD a few weeks ago. And finally, G Darklighter says it doesn't matter whether I support it or not. They're supported by the First Amendment, which is all they need. You can weigh in on the conversation by following us on Twitter, liking us on Facebook, and of course you can email us at news@kpbs.org or skip the middleman and email me directly at jfarian@kpbs.org. I'd love to hear from you. And now Dwayne has a recap of our top stories.
San Diego Unified School District's credit rating has been downgraded by Moody's. It slipped from AA2 to AA1. The downgrade makes it more expensive for the district to borrow money. And Governor Brown has proposed a plan to move new state workers to a hybrid pension system where guaranteed benefits are combined with a 401k style plan. It would raise the retirement age for civil workers from 55 to 67. You can watch and comment on any of the stories you saw tonight on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night. We leave you with a look at the forecast.